Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. Let's look at the topics that we're going to discuss today. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 11 important articles. So let's cover them comprehensively so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. Now, before we start, I have an important announcement. If you're looking to enroll for Unacademy's online classes, now you can avail a 12-month subscription at just 19,999 and you need to use the code IAS English in order to avail this discounted price. Those interested can click on the link provided in the video description below. And if you want the PDF of the session, please scan the QR code and join our official Telegram channel because after the session ends, we will be sharing the PDF over here. So let's get started and look at the first topic. On page number 6, we have a column written by Justice N. Anand Venkatesh, a serving judge at the Madras High Court. This article deals with a very important concept. It deals with the topic of constitutional morality. The author is not only breaking down the concept of constitutional morality, but the author is also setting the historical context, how the concept evolved in legal jurisprudence. What is its relevance and significance in today's India? So this is what we can understand by going through this article. And of course, we'll have a more detailed and elaborate discussion by going beyond the article as well. So let's start with the basics, because I'm sure many of you may have just started your preparation and you may not be able to grasp the concept of constitutional morality. So first, let's understand what is morality in the first place. Morality is essentially a set of unwritten rules that you see in the society since ancient times till contemporary times, across countries, across regions, across different time periods. You see a distinct set of societal norms which are considered to be almost sacrosanct, which helps distinguish between what is right and what is wrong. For example, killing another human being is obviously across cultures, across time, usually considered as immoral. It is something the society looks down upon. So, such norms which help identify what is right or wrong in the society, they are often referred to as the morals of the society. They are not written, it's a set of unwritten code, right? It is influenced by religion, it is influenced by culture, it is influenced by philosophy and the political developments taking place in a society. For example, in ancient times, in the Indian civilization, the concept of dharma is a great example for a moral code being enforced. Then, if you look at the writings of Tiruvalluvar, if you go through Tirukural, the ancient Tamil text, it provides a set of societal norms which helps identify what's right, what's wrong. But of course, morals are highly subjective in nature. It can vary from time to time, region to region, culture to culture. It can vary from individual to individual as well. Sometimes what is moral according to you may not be moral according to me. So, societal norms that are considered as the morals of the society, which has often been the legal standard which restricts human behavior, which maintains order in the society. But this doesn't have relevance in a modern constitutional democracy. Usually, societal morals, they are defined by the majority. What the majority feel is right is considered as the morals that need to be followed. But that's not what constitutional democracy is about. Constitutional democracy is not about the rule of the majority. It's about egalitarian values, progressive values like liberty, equality, rule of law, where every individual is seen as equal, where freedom of speech and expression and basic fundamental rights are guaranteed. Now, if you just follow societal norms, there could be certain norms or morals considered in the society which could be detrimental to the very ideal of liberal progressive thought. For example, there are societies which are patriarchal, right? Even today, most societies across the world are patriarchal, where gender equality doesn't come naturally in the society, or where there is religion based discrimination, or majority domination over minority groups, or caste based hierarchies. Now, just because these societal morals are there, would you follow that? Can can a state in a modern era where a constitutional setup is present, can you allow for such morals to be followed? So, morality, which distinguishes between right and wrong, is not only subjective, it is usually seen as acceptable to the majority alone. What is acceptable to the majority in the society is often construed as societal morals. But that's not how constitutional democracies function. Now, if you look at the concept of constitutional morality, the Constitution, the sacred legal document that defines the political setup, the relationship between the state and the citizens, the rights accorded to the citizens, the restrictions on the state, this sacred document should not only be followed in letter, but it should be followed in spirit. This is the essence of constitutional morality. When you apply the concept of morality to constitutional principles and ensure that every entity, every organization, every individual, if they live up to not just the letter of the constitution, but the spirit, when the constitution is drafted by the founding fathers, by the Constituent Assembly, there would be a set of core principles which are considered as foundational for that country. So, following those foundational principles to the core, living up to the spirit of those ideals, not just blindly following the literal version of the Constitution, not just following the letter by each word, but upholding the core essence of the Constitution, upholding the spirit of the Constitution. This is often referred to as constitutional morality. And this has legal value as well. Judicial precedents are set based on this. Be it how the state entities have to function, how constitutional authorities have to function, or how constitutional officers can be held accountable. The concept of constitutional morality is applied by the courts time and again to ensure that the nation functions in accordance with the foundational values and the core principles through which the constitution was founded. Now, the history of this concept, the concept of constitutional morality, goes back to Britain in 1960s during the famous debate between Hart and Devlin, the Hart-Devlin debate of the 1960s. These legal philosophers, they had a very interesting debate on whether constitutional morality should be upheld or should societal morality should be upheld in a modern democracy. This debate came up over the issue of homosexuality. The main argument in the debate between Hart and Devlin was whether homosexuality should it be decriminalized in accordance with progressive libertarian values, or should societal norms and conservative values and morals be protected to protect the structure of the society itself. For example, Hart took a position that law should not interfere with one's private life, with individual matters of liberty. Because, see, there was a committee, the Wolf-Fenden Committee, which had suggested the decriminalization of homosexual acts, private consensual homosexual acts, and as well as prostitution. So while this legal criminal reform was being debated, this argument came up between Hart and Devlin. That's what is referred to as the Hart-Devlin debate, where Hart supported the position on individual liberty. Though the law does not exactly decriminalize homosexuality or legalize prostitution, Hart was of the opinion that if you go by the ethos of the Constitution, the spirit of the Constitution, the state should not be interfering with individual lives, with the personal liberty of an individual. So, what someone does in their private is not the business of the society or the state. This was the position held by Hart. But Devlin took the contrarian position, the opposite. Devlin was of the view that society is justified in using even draconian criminal laws to enforce these standards on individuals in order to ensure that harmful practices, according to the majority, according to the society, does not lead to the degeneration of the society. Because in conservative societies, orthodox societies, homosexuality, prostitution was looked down upon as an immoral act. So Devlin held the view that society has a right to use the legal provisions, to use the constitutional provisions, to enforce them to target immoral acts so that society can be preserved, so social structures and morals can be preserved. Now, this comes up in the debate in the House of Lords as well in 1960s and 70s, where the doctrine of constitutional morality started evolving, and it was since then applied in British jurisprudence. In India as well, the concept would take root through Supreme Court's intervention starting from 1990s. In 1994, in the P. Ratinam versus Union of India, the Supreme Court referred to a historic verdict in the US courts in 1949 in the Frankfurter case, bringing out the idea of constitutional morality into the Indian context. In the P. Ratinam case, the Supreme Court held that law embodies a system of rights based on moral principles. And it referred to the ancient medieval times, how moral values were considered as the legal code of that era. But today the world has changed. It's not just majoritarian social norms which are considered as the laws, but there is a legal foundation created by the Constitution, focused on rule of law and equality and liberty. And it is these values that need to be really upheld in spirit, not just in letter, not just in theory, but in practice as well. So we have seen the application of constitutional morality in several high profile cases, important cases by the Indian judiciary. In fact, if you look at the debates in the Constituent Assembly, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the father of the Indian Constitution, was strongly of the opinion that the Indian society is not inherently democratic. And that is true to a large extent. If you look at the history of the Indian civilization, right, Indian society has largely not been democratic in its structure and function. So democracy was something that was a new introduction in the Indian subcontinent of sorts. So Dr. Ambedkar said, if democratic values have to really take root in the country, in a new nation, it has to be cultivated, it has to be nurtured amongst the population. Every government institution, every constitutional office and authority, public servants, and the citizens, they have to inculcate this habit, develop this culture of not just following the letter and word of the Constitution, but by living up to the spirit, the ethos of the constitutional values. Dr. Ambedkar said, constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment. It doesn't come naturally to individuals and to society. In traditional conservative societies, the focus is on focusing or following societal morals, which is acceptable only to the majority. But if you really have to live up to egalitarian values like liberty, equality, fraternity, and uphold rule of law, then the spirit of constitutional morality has to be nurtured in the society. High offices, like, for example, the office of the president, the judiciary itself, prime minister's office, the cabinet, the parliament, the governor's office, public servants, civil servants, and the citizens, they all have to cultivate this value, cultivate this culture of respecting, upholding the Constitution, and the morals that are enshrined, the unspoken word of the Constitution should be upheld. Even those values the Constitution doesn't talk about. if it aligns with the larger ethos and the foundational values, the core principles of the Constitution, that is something which needs to be upheld by all those who are responsible. So B.R. Ambedkar spoke about this. If you look at the argument of Professor Dicey, a well-known thinker and philosopher, Dicey also has a very interesting take on the concept of constitutional morality. He said, constitutional law is made up of two distinct elements. Any law enforced in the society based on constitutional principles, it has two distinct elements. The first is the law of the Constitution, where the law is, which is passed by the legislature, it's essentially unquestionable of sorts. This unquestionable law passed by the legislature is followed, it is enacted, it is enforced by the courts. Where the laws passed by the legislature based on the constitutional principles, they are enforced by the courts. The second set would be those rules which are considered as conventions, which are not written anywhere, which is not codified, which is not passed by your legislature. They can't essentially be enforced by the courts per se. Now, these are practices that you inculcate over a period of time. For example, courts protecting individual privacy against any state surveillance. For example, courts upholding individual rights, the right to free speech and expression, as long as it fits within the normative concerns, as long as it doesn't breach the reasonable restrictions, ensuring that the state authority is restricted and limited to where it is necessary. So, such conventions that you see, which are followed in practice, in criminal law, in legal jurisprudence, that is the second set of rules that you see in a constitutional setup, according to Dicey. So one is a set of laws which are codified by the legislature, which are they are enforced word by word in a literal sense by the courts. The other would be a set of unwritten rules, or unspoken set of codes, right? What we call as conventions, which are to be followed, which may not be enforceable, but something which needs to be followed, upheld, not just by the courts, the legislature, and the state, but by the citizens as well. So if you look at landmark cases such as the Sabrimala case or the Manoj Narula case, where Article 75 came into question, in these landmark judgments, the Supreme Court referred to the ideal of constitutional morality, that what majority dictate in the society need not be the law that should be followed. Because constitutional morality dictates that you uphold the foundational values of the Constitution, where every individual has an equal voice, where the powers of the state needs to be curbed to some extent to protect your individual fundamental rights, your basic rights that are guaranteed. So in Article 75 debate in the Manoj Narula case, the question was about criminal elements in the legislature, MPs, MLAs who have a criminal background. So here the court took the path of constitutional morality, expecting the Prime Minister to appoint only such ministers in the cabinet who are free from a criminal record. So this is not written anywhere. It's more of a convention that was considered. And you see the reflection of this in other landmark judgments in recent times as well. In the State of Delhi versus Union of India concerning the role of the Lieutenant Governor and the alleged interference by the center. Here as well, the angle of constitutional morality was brought in the case Puttaswamy case, the landmark case Puttaswamy judgment in 2017, through which Supreme Court upheld right to privacy as a fundamental right under Article 21. Even here, the ideal of constitutional morality was applied by the courts. So eventually, the writer says that though it is expected in a liberal constitutional setup that the spirit of the Constitution should be upheld, eventually, the only way in which you can enforce this or you can see this actually in practice is by ensuring that the responsible individuals, organizations are held accountable for their actions. So this can be done through the form of elections. When the electorate, in the hands of the electorate, lies the fate of the political parties and the governments which would be formed. So they can hold the state accountable, and vice versa. It works both ways. So when the spirit of constitutional morality is cultivated, it promotes the implementation of the foundational values of the Constitution. So that is what we learn from this important article. The writer concludes by saying that the way forward for a country like India lies in continuously cultivating the ideal of constitutional morality, not just amongst citizens, but amongst the lawmakers, policymakers, those who hold constitutional offices, amongst the government organizations, and as well as amongst the judiciary. So all the stakeholders in the Indian polity, they need to cultivate the culture of constitutional morality, living up to the ideals, the ethos, the spirit of the constitution based on which it was framed and drafted. So take up this practice question. Constitutional morality is not inherent or inherited, but it must be nurtured and embraced. Evaluate. So that's a statement which has been given to you. So in the introduction, you can attribute this statement to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So you can refer to the quote by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who believed that constitutional morality doesn't come naturally to Indians. It is something which has to be cultivated and nurtured. And then in the body, you can explain, basically define the concept of constitutional morality. Define the concept. What does constitutional morality mean? Maybe give a brief history of its evolution in another paragraph. Then cite some examples where constitutional morality has been brought out in the Indian context, like the Sabarimala case, the Delhi versus Union of India case. Couple of cases that you can mention to show the application of constitutional morality, what the Indian judiciary feels about the concept of constitutional morality, and then conclude your answer by pointing out that yes, constitutional morality is more of a culture which has to be nurtured. It has to be promoted, it has to be cultivated amongst all the stakeholders, amongst the citizens, the government, the judiciary, the policy makers, the civil servants, everyone has to cultivate, nurture the spirit of constitutional morality. That has to be the conclusion part of your answer. So use this structure that we have created here to practice your answer writing based on what we have discussed. Now let's move to the next article. A very important article related to environment and ecology. The IUCN has recently published a report on World Heritage Sites, the natural and mixed heritage sites, where environment conservation, biodiversity protection has been a concern. And according to this latest report by IUCN, the Western Ghats of India is facing a significant concern as far as biodiversity conservation is concerned. Then even the Manas National Park in Assam and Sundarbans in West Bengal, they are also listed by the IUCN in this new report as biodiversity areas of significant concern, meaning there is a heightened risk of destruction of biodiversity in Western Ghats, in Sundarbans, and in Manas, which are very critical habitats in the Indian subcontinent. So let's dive deep into this article and understand what this report is all about, and also talk about the significance of these heritage sites. The IUCN has published the World Heritage Outlook Report number 4. Please make a note, this is important for prelims as well. Some of the facts can be relevant for prelims. The World Heritage Outlook Report number 4, published by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. This report basically analyzes World Heritage sites around the world. The World Heritage sites, which are designated by UNESCO under the World Heritage Convention. So under the World Heritage Program of UNESCO, there are different categories of heritage sites which are chosen for conservation and protection. There are 3 categories under which the World Heritage tag is provided. First is for a natural site, which is very rich in biodiversity. Like Western Ghats, for example, Sundarbans, these are World Heritage sites because of their natural heritage. So it's under the natural category. Then you also have the cultural category, a site which has rich culture, rich history, is accorded with the tag of World Heritage Site under the cultural category. India has so many UNESCO World Heritage Sites under the cultural category, right? In fact, majority of our World Heritage Sites are under the cultural category, from Hampi to Konark to Taj Mahal, right? But apart from natural and cultural, there's another category, the mixed category. A site which has both natural and cultural elements. They are accorded the World Heritage tag under the mixed category. India has only one World Heritage site under the mixed category, and I'll tell you which one it is. Okay, I'll come to that point. So, UNESCO World Heritage Sites listed under natural, mixed, and cultural categories. Within that, you have the natural and mixed category, which includes important biodiversity hotspots and ecosystems and habitats which are of great significance, ecological significance. So, IUCN brings out this study where it evaluates the natural and mixed sites to study the ecosystems and the conservation efforts and the threats, the vulnerabilities that are present, and publishes this in the form of a report. So, more than 200 such heritage sites have been assessed by IUCN in this report using a scientific approach, and it has focused on these sites across Asia. The focus of this particular study has been the natural and mixed World Heritage sites across Asian countries. More than 200 sites have been studied. Now, according to the report, 40% of these sites are facing increased threat because of climate change, because of habitat destruction, because of pollution, and other anthropogenic activities. So, under the report, there is a lot of focus on South Asia, particularly on India. Now, if you look at the natural World Heritage sites of India and the entire world, they comprise of 1% of Earth's total surface area. If you take all the UNESCO Natural World Heritage Sites, they account for just 1% of the global surface area. But they are so rich in biodiversity that they account for 20% of the mapped global species. You can imagine how biodiverse these heritage sites are. They account for just under 1% of the Earth's surface area, but they account for more than 20% of the species distribution and richness. Thousands of flora, fauna, many of which are considered to be threatened on the IUCN Red List, they inhabit these natural World Heritage sites. Some of them are endemic, meaning they are found only within these habitats that are designated as natural World Heritage sites by UNESCO. So, under the Convention on Biological Diversity, the CBD, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework has been adopted, the 30 by 30 target to conserve 30% of land ecosystems, 30% of marine ecosystems by the end of the decade. This is a biodiversity goal adopted under the Global Biodiversity Framework of the CBD Convention, also known as the Kunming-Montreal Protocol. So this aligns with the goals of UNESCO World Heritage Convention. The purpose of designating these natural, cultural, and mixed sites under UNESCO is to bring greater focus on them, provide more funding, and bring some expertise, and as well as achieve international cooperation for protection, conservation of these sites. Push the national governments to invest more funds and resources to protect and conserve these critical sites, which are important for either the ecological stability of the earth or for the cultural heritage of humanity. So, if you look at the natural sites and the mixed sites, they are extremely biodiverse regions. That's why this report by IUCN holds a lot of significance, a lot of importance. Now, if you look at the World Heritage Sites in India, India has plenty of them. As I said, majority of them are under the cultural category. But only 7 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in India are under the natural category. Please make a note of this fact. Very, very important for your prelims. These 7 natural World Heritage Sites include the Western Ghats over here, Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, Kaziranga and Manas from Assam, So two protected areas in Assam, Kyoldio National Park in Rajasthan, close to the borders with Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Nanda Devi Valley of Flowers in Uttarakhand, the Great Himalayan National Park Conservation Area in the Himachal sector. So these are the 7 natural World Heritage Sites in India. And there's only one heritage site in our country which is under the mixed category. And which is this one? This is in Sikkim, the Kanchenjunga Biosphere Reserve and the National Park, located at the foothills of Mount Kanchenjunga, one of the highest peaks in the Himalayas. This is the only mixed heritage site. It has been designated by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, not just for its natural beauty, biodiversity, and richness, but also for the cultural uniqueness of the Kanchenjunga National Park. It is home to a unique tribe and a Tibeto Buddhist tradition and culture. So, in recognition of the natural and cultural significance, Kanchenjunga National Park is the only mixed World Heritage Site in our country. So, this study has focused on the natural and mixed heritage sites of India. So, in total, these 8 sites which I have mentioned. Now, if you look at the previous reports of IUCN, in the South Asia region, 63% of these sites had a positive conservation outlook in the last 3 assessments. The last 3 assessments were done in 2014, 2017, and 2020. In these 3 assessments, 63% of these sites in South Asia had a positive conservation outlook status, which was given by IUCN, meaning their conservation was seen to be on track. And it was seen that these critical areas and habitats were well protected. But now, if you look at the data from the World Heritage Outlook Report number 4, published in 2025, the positive conservation outlook has dropped to 57%. Only 57% of the total sites that were assessed, right? Only 57% of them have a positive conservation outlook. And Western Ghats, Manas National Park in Assam, and Sundarbans in West Bengal, they have been rated as heritage sites of significant concern, meaning the threat and vulnerability has gone up for these World Heritage Sites. But if you look at the other World Heritage Sites in India, the Great Himalayan National Park, Kaziranga, Kyoldio, Nanda Devi, and Kanchenjunga, they have a good conservation outlook, a positive conservation outlook. Meaning conservation efforts at these heritage sites, they are on track. The threat and vulnerabilities are relatively less. They are relatively manageable. But the real concern is about the Western Ghats and Sundarbans and Manas. That is what the report is highlighting. It is pointing out the specific threats which are present. For example, in Western Ghats, there are multiple threats and challenges that are present. See, Western Ghats is a biodiversity hotspot, home to several endemic species. Many of them are threatened. In fact, almost 320 plus species in Western Ghats, they are listed as threatened on the IUCN Red List. There are several species of mammals, reptiles, amphibians, birds, and plants as well. Many of them are endemic to Western Ghats, not found anywhere else in the world. And many of them are threatened. They are either vulnerable or endangered or critically endangered on the IUCN Red List. Take, for example, the Nilgiri Thar. So, species such as the Nilgiri Thar, which is endemic to this region, face heightened risk. And the IUCN report on the World Heritage Sites, it points out the specific concerns like construction of roads, excessive tourism, climate change. These factors have been specifically listed out for World Heritage Sites like Western Ghats and Sundarbans and even Manas, where the threat is increasing because of these challenges. Over tourism results in pollution. A lot of waste is thrown around, which gets consumed by animals as well, which increases incidents of man animal conflict. Take, for example, how incidents of elephant human conflict has gone up in Western Ghats. Or take, for example, how rhino human conflict has gone up in Manas National Park, or tiger human conflict has gone up in Sundarbans. The habitat destruction is happening because of over-exploitative tourism, unregulated tourism, the impact of climate change, rising salinity levels and sea levels, and as well as the construction of road and rail network. Along with this, there are other threat factors identified by the report, like forest fires, road kills, where roads are running through these protected areas, and several vehicles uh, they might run down the animals, wild animals, increasing the risk for the wildlife. So all these risk factors are identified one by one. The report even notes the impact of invasive alien species, how exotic species can threaten the native biodiversity. For example, in Western Ghats, eucalyptus and acacia, which are foreign to this region, they were primarily from Australia, which were introduced to the Indian subcontinent during the colonial period by the British. So, such invasive exotic alien species, they have spread far and wide in the Western Ghats. Eucalyptus plantations, widespread growth of acacia, replacement of forest land by plantation and commercial crops by the local communities. All these have disturbed the habitat. They have disturbed the ecological balance itself. And today it is threatening the, the very well being and the integrity of these critical ecosystems. And in places like Western Ghats, there are many large public infrastructure projects which are being considered, which are being set up. There are hundreds of hydropower dams built right in the heart of the Western Ghats. For example, the upcoming Silahala pumped storage hydroelectric plant in Tamil Nadu across River Silahala and River Kunda, where they meet. This massive hydropower project is likely to displace several communities and submerge a large tract of forest land. And it's seen as a serious threat for the ecosystems of the Western Ghats. So these projects, these threats are individually highlighted in the report. For example, in Sundarbans, the main concern is about rising salinity, rising sea level, storm surge during cyclones in particular, and how it threatens the mangrove ecosystem here, which in turn can have a cascading effect on other species, going right up to the Royal Bengal tiger, which is which is known to be the most prominent species of the Sundarbans. So the flag raised by the report, it raises all these individual flags. So this helps us understand the threat profile being faced in the World Heritage Sites of India, particularly in Western Ghats, Sundarbans, and in Manas. Now, in comparison, China has been performing much better than India because this report focused on World Heritage Sites across Asia. China has 7 sites in the best protected and managed category. India has not even one site in the best protected and managed protected area category, but China has 7 such sites, including Badain Jaran Desert, Towers of Sand, then the Chengjiang fossil site, Mount Huangshan. These sites are very, very well conserved and protected, as recognized by the IUCN in the report. So it shows that India still has a lot of catching up to do when it comes to conserving these World Heritage Sites. So take up this practice question based on what we have discussed. Some of the facts are very important for your prelims, and the analysis could be relevant for the mains exam. Now, moving on, we have an article written by India's former ambassador to Nepal, Manjeev Singh Puri. He writes about 3 recent policy measures of RBI. The Reserve Bank of India has taken 3 new steps which could have a positive impact on India Nepal relations. So it's a very impactful article. Obviously, Manjeev Singh Puri, who has served as the Indian ambassador to Nepal, is writing based on his years of experience in dealing with Nepal. He understands the economy of Nepal very well and Nepal's economic dependency on India. He has a good insight into India Nepal trade relations and the economic ties. So the entire article is focused on the economic relations between the two countries. The writer is saying the 3 new policies introduced by RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, the central bank, has come out with 3 new policy changes And this could have a positive influence, a positive impact on India-Nepal bilateral relations. So let's understand this. What are these three measures, three new steps taken by the RBI? The first one, the RBI has allowed authorized dealer banks, the AD banks, to lend rupee loans to non-residents from these three neighboring countries. The non-residents from Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka. Now they can procure loans from Indian banks in Indian rupees. This facility has been extended for cross-border transactions. So this is going to benefit the traders and investors immensely. Those who trade between these countries, especially from Nepal and Bhutan, because they have a lot of dependency on India. Because don't forget, Nepal, Bhutan are landlocked nations. They don't have direct access to the sea. Most of their imports come from India. India is their largest trade partner. Without India, both Nepal, Bhutan will basically collapse. They have a lot of economic dependency on India for trade, for exports, and as well as for liquidity support. So the extension of these INR loans, where the authorized dealer banks in India are now allowed by the RBI to lend rupee loans to non-residents in Nepal, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka. This will significantly boost the credit availability. It will make it easier for traders, investors to borrow more capital in Indian rupees from Indian banks and invest that in these countries, which can significantly boost the trade relationship. The other big change is RBI allowing special rupee Vostro accounts. I'm sure many of you would be familiar with Vostro Nostro accounts, especially in the context of Russia-Ukraine war, as India created Vostro Nostro accounts to facilitate rupee-based payments to Russian oil imports. So through these accounts, foreign banks, which have accounts here in Indian banks in INR, right? This facility is now being extended to neighboring countries like Nepal. They can make use of these Vostro accounts, where accounts which are held in foreign banks designated in Indian rupees with the Indian banks. So this facility will further help in driving investments. See, previously, investments from Nepal were allowed into government securities because both countries give national treatment to each other under the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. India could basically invest in the government securities of Nepal. Now, even in corporate bonds and commercial papers, these investments can be driven because of the opening of Vostro accounts. Then finally, the third one, having a transparent reference rate, an exchange rate for the currencies to provide for stability for the Nepali rupee and ensure the stability of rupee based transactions. Because I hope you know, Nepal's currency, the Nepali rupee, NPR, it is pegged to the Indian rupee, INR. One reason why Nepal's economy is able to remain stable despite all its fundamental problems is because its currency is pegged to the Indian rupee at 1.6. Basically, 1 Indian rupee in Nepal is roughly 1.59, 1.6 Nepali rupees. This stable reference rate provided by India allows the Nepali currency to remain stable despite volatility in global reserve currencies like the dollar. So Nepal need not depend heavily on the dollar. This is what enables the close integration of Indian banking with Nepali banking. Even our UPI has been seamlessly rolled out in Nepal because Nepali rupee is pegged to the Indian currency at 1.6. So this has shielded the Nepali rupee from very serious depreciation. Because I am sure you're aware, Nepal's economy is in shambles. That's the reason why the Gen Z protests took place. Why the younger generation, which was frustrated, they took up a violent revolution to throw out the political regime and to bring about a change in government, a change in leadership. For many decades, Nepal's economy has been mismanaged. Elite government leaders have been corrupt. Job creation has been difficult. Economic opportunities have not been created across industries and sectors. So Nepal's economy, which is on the brink of collapse, has been able to thrive and at least remain stable in terms of its currency rate. because the currency is pegged to the Indian rupee at 1.6. It gives that much needed flexibility for liquidity management by Nepal's central bank. So these changes that are being made by India's RBI will immensely help investors and traders, the government of Nepal, the banks in Nepal, and this can drive the trade relationship even further. And it can bring more Indian investments into Nepal. See, Nepal is India's 17th largest export destination. But for Nepal, India is the number one export destination. Our trade volume is roughly $9 billion, out of which India exports $8 billion worth of goods and services, from vehicles to electricity to fuel to food, medicines. India provides all essential items, even cooking gas. Essential commodities is primarily supplied from India to Nepal. 8 billion worth of exports from India to Nepal, whereas Nepal hardly exports $1 billion worth of goods back to India. But still, India is the largest trading partner of Nepal. It's a landlocked country, depends on India to trade with rest of the world. So these facilities that RBI has now extended for offshore operations of Indian banks, this will immensely help the traders. It will help the Nepali diaspora, right, who are working in India. They send remittances back home to their country. So these transactions would be enabled in a much more efficient manner, resulting in significant savings, creating lucrative investment opportunities. And that's why the writer believes that this could be a positive development for India-Nepal relations. It can have a multiplier effect where Nepal can benefit. India can ensure that the further loans that we extend, the line of credit that India would provide, the sovereign guarantees that India might provide, will significantly help in reducing the pressure on Nepal's current account deficit and the forex instability, especially in an unstable global market where there's a lot of volatility in the dollar price. It can help Nepal to rely directly on rupee-based transactions while dealing with India. Now, coming to the next article, the ASEAN summit has started in Malaysia. Malaysia is playing host to the ASEAN summit. Prime Minister Modi was supposed to attend, but the Prime Minister has cancelled the physical participation at the last minute. Reports indicate it could be because to avoid an awkward interaction with US President Donald Trump, who would also be present. So instead, PM Modi chose to attend the ASEAN summit virtually. And as part of this, India-ASEAN summit meeting has also taken place. The Prime Minister has praised the India-ASEAN relationship. Now, let's understand the brief history of this relationship. The ASEAN countries are very crucial partners for India. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, until now it consisted of 10 countries from Southeast Asia: Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Brunei, Philippines, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. These 10 Southeast Asian countries have been foundational for India's foreign policy in the last 3 decades. Now there is a new member which has been added to the group. A new member has joined, that is Timor-Leste or East Timor. So with this, ASEAN has expanded to 11 members. It's a very tight-knit political, economic, security-based grouping. And these countries are very, very crucial for Indian interests. India started focusing more towards this region from 1991 onwards. Because in 91, India was facing multiple challenges, both externally and internally. Externally, the global order was collapsing and changing from a bipolar world to a unipolar world as Cold War rivalries came to an end. India's best friend, USSR, had collapsed and disintegrated. So India needed new friends, new allies at the global level. Internally, we were dealing with a massive economic crisis, the balance of payments crisis. India introduced the LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. So we needed new markets to export our goods. We needed to attract investments as FDI and FII into the Indian market. We needed to scout for raw materials and resources from around the world. So India desperately needed new partners, new friends. So then Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao diversified India's foreign policy by launching the Look East policy of India. under which India started paying more attention towards the Eastern Hemisphere, focusing on Southeast and East Asia, building closer economic, cultural, defense ties with them. So this policy became a huge success, though there were some shortcomings. India got very close to Southeast Asian countries via the ASEAN group. Today, we have a free trade agreement between India and ASEAN. There's plenty of investments from both the sides. A lot of people to people exchanges takes place. And this relationship has become very, very crucial for India's power projection in the Indo-Pacific. This policy has now been upgraded to Act East policy by the Modi government. In 2014, Look East policy was upgraded to Act East policy. So since 1992, India has been engaging very closely with ASEAN countries under the Look East policy. India started with a sectoral summit with the ASEAN countries in 1992. In 1996, India was elevated by the ASEAN countries to the status of a dialogue partner. ASEAN countries give the status of dialogue partner to very few close partners like US, China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Russia, etc. So India also is one of the dialogue partners of ASEAN. And from 2002, both sides have been holding annual India-ASEAN summit at the leadership level, where all the 10 ASEAN leaders meet with India's Prime Minister. There are regular high-profile diplomatic exchanges and visits. So this has led to the transformation of India's ties with Southeast Asian countries. So today the Prime Minister has highlighted the achievements under the Look East and Act East policy of India. In Act East policy, there is more focus on strategic defense relations. There is focus on protecting India's core interests. There is focus on delivering on India's promises and commitments. Because in Look East policy, there were few shortcomings. Some of the promises by India were not fulfilled. India also felt that ASEAN countries had a stronger bargaining power, that they were extracting more from India through the free trade agreement, which was affecting India's domestic producers. So in Act East policy, India has become more hard-nosed in its bargaining, and it has taken a more proactive role in defense and strategic affairs of the region as well, building closer military ties and defense engagement. So Prime Minister Modi has taken stock of these developments, and important initiatives were announced during the India-ASEAN summit. So please make a note, 10 important initiatives were rolled out under the comprehensive strategic partnership between India and ASEAN. First, PM Modi welcomed the new member into ASEAN. He congratulated East Timor on its entry into ASEAN as a new official member. Then, India-ASEAN Action Plan, which is being implemented, has been revised and upgraded for the next 4 to 5 years. The ASEAN-India Comprehensive Strategic Partnership for 2026 to 2030 consists of a plan of action where they have identified certain focus areas and they have expressed support for implementing the goals identified under the plan of action. They have issued a statement on sustainable tourism. Tourism can generate not just economic activity, it can create cultural soft power influence and build people to people relations. Especially for Indian tourists, Southeast Asian countries are very, very popular. And India can also attract Southeast Asian tourists mainly because of its Buddhist heritage and as well as its Hindu heritage. Because you find those religious cultural links spread across Southeast Asia, the Hindu-Buddhist linkages that bind the two regions. 2026 has been designated as the year of India-ASEAN maritime cooperation, highlighting the maritime nature of our relations. We are linked by the Bay of Bengal. We are connected through the Andaman Sea, the Strait of Malacca, which are all part of the larger Indo-Pacific. So maritime ties, focus on maritime trade, maritime security is a focus, and this has been recognized through the initiative that has been launched. Then the defense ministers meeting and the defense exercise has been reiterated. Between ASEAN defense ministers and India, the second defense ministers meeting is likely to take place soon, and the India-ASEAN maritime exercise would be made into a mainstream military exercise going forward. India's role as the first responder in the region has been reiterated during the interaction. India has been delivering HADR support, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief to any country affected by a disaster in the Indo Pacific. India wants to be seen as the net security provider for the region. India wants to emerge as the net security provider and the first responder, be it a natural disaster like earthquakes or tsunamis or volcanoes, or be it a pandemic, or be it even an economic crisis. India wants to be there to help out all the countries, particularly in Southeast Asia and across the wider Indo Pacific. Then, apart from this, they have launched an initiative to train professionals in renewable energy for setting up the ASEAN Power Grid Initiative, which eventually would be connected with the Indian renewable energy grid. Prime Minister Modi has launched the ambitious One Sun, One World, One Grid project. So, one of the ambition is to eventually link the renewable energy grid of the Indian subcontinent with that of the ASEAN Power Grid. India is rolling out few quick impact projects in Timor Leste, and this has been officially announced. Then a proposal to establish a Center for Southeast Asian Studies at the Nalanda University, the historic Nalanda, which was one of the ancient places of learning, a center for Buddhist studies, spiritual and literary studies of the ancient era, which attracted students from across Asia, forms a historical cultural bond. And today, India has revived the Nalanda University through the East Asia Summit. Many countries are involved in the revival of Nalanda, including China, including Japan, including the Southeast Asian countries. So, a dedicated school would be set up here, a Center for Southeast Asian Studies. And other important areas of collaboration, from energy security to renewable energy, semiconductors, critical emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, procurement of critical minerals, rare earths. All these partnerships have been reiterated. And finally, under East Asia Summit, the Maritime Heritage Festival is going to be organized at Lothal in Gujarat, a Indus Valley site known for its maritime heritage. So, India will be hosting the East Asia Summit Maritime Heritage Festival at this historical location, that is Lothal in Gujarat. So, these are the 10 big announcements that were made, which highlights the close bonds between India and ASEAN countries. Coming to the next article on page 7, we have a column written by Najib Jung, a former civil servant, the former lieutenant governor of Delhi as well. He is cautioning India about its engagement with Taliban. See, this is a topic we have covered repeatedly, so I'll not waste your time. I'll not repeat the same points which we have discussed in the last couple of weeks. But one interesting point raised by the writer here is that the writer says that India should not be trusting Taliban at this point. Taliban being an extremist entity with an ideological commitment for promoting Wahhabism, which is a radical misinterpreted version of Islam. And Taliban will always have those linkages with the Pakistani state actors like ISI. Despite the current clashes and conflict between Afghanistan and Pakistan, Taliban can't shed its image of being an extremist militant organization. It can't get rid of its linkages with Pakistani deep state. So, an engagement with such an extremist outfit for India, for a democratic country like India, could significantly hurt its image, according to the writer. This strategy could backfire in the long run as well, according to the writer. The writer acknowledges that right now India has few strategic pragmatic interests. That's why we are engaging with Taliban. Maybe India is looking at access to intelligence, mainly to counter terrorism. India is looking at intelligence access from Taliban, maybe to counter Pakistan and keep pressure on Pakistan. But the writer says these are short term gains that we are looking at. In the long run, Taliban is not going to shed its extremist image. It will not give up its commitment on Wahhabism, enforcing the Sharia. It will not give up targeting women and religious minorities. The writer presents the entire history of how Taliban has targeted the Shias and Hazaras, Ahmadiyas, and the others, including Hindu and Sikh communities and Buddhists. He reminds us of the destruction of the Bamiyan Buddha statues. So Taliban is unlikely to move away from this path. So in that context, he's warning India to be very cautious. He's actually asking India not to engage with Taliban, keeping in mind the long-term image of India and how this could easily backfire. Because eventually, Taliban will remain an extremist organization which will be involved in uh, cases of human rights violations, or it could be engaged in terrorist activities, and eventually it might even end up working with terror organizations like Al Qaeda, Lashkar, Jaish-e-Mohammed, and the others. Taliban has never severed those contacts and ties with these deadly terror outfits that operate in the same region, in the same belt, in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Balochistan region, where the Pashtun community is found. Taliban is still in active contact with these terrorist outfits, and this will always remain a persistent threat for India. So the writer is questioning India's engagement with Taliban on these grounds. Is that clear? Now, moving on, there's an article on India Japan people to people relations. See, Japan is today having an aging population. It's dealing with the problem of an aging society. Almost one third of its population is above the age of 65 years. So it doesn't have enough workers today, right? And Japan desperately needs working age population. Its fertility rates have gone down, birth rate has fallen, death rate has gone up. So Japan is dealing with a major demographic problem and it needs more and more workers. So it is looking to rely on countries like India. So this reminds us of the historical and interesting connect between India and Japan. For many decades, India and Japan have been very close partners. There has always been close government to government relations, even from private to private industries. There has been very close collaboration between both sides. Now, who doesn't remember the legendary collaboration between India's Maruti and Japan's Suzuki? How the transformation in India's four-wheel automobile sector happened because of the participation of Japan's Suzuki. It was mainly Japanese engineers, managers who came to India, drove the assembly transformation in Maruti Suzuki plants in India, creating a complete revolution in India's automotive industry. So today, Japan needs India's help. India has received that support from Japan through technology, through expertise, and even through Japanese concessional loans. India has been one of the largest recipients of Japanese concessional loans. Japan has funded the urban metro rail projects, the dedicated freight corridor, and the upcoming bullet train project between Mumbai and Ahmedabad is also funded by Japan. Many developmental projects in Northeast India, infrastructure projects across the country, like Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor, they're all funded with Japanese loans. So today, India is in the right position to help Japan to deal with its aging population. See, India has 65% of its population under the age of 35 years. Out of the 1.4, 1.5 billion people that we are, 65% of our population, they're under the age of 35 years. That's why India enjoys this demographic dividend. But problem is India is struggling to create opportunities for the youth. We are struggling to educate them, give them the right training and skills, and India is struggling to create jobs for the working age population in the country. So look at the opposite scenarios in India and Japan. Japan has work opportunities, but it doesn't have the workforce. India has the working age population, but they lack the opportunities, they lack the training and skills as well. So this is where India-Japan collaboration can help each other. It can be mutually beneficial. Recently, in August 2025, when PM Modi visited Japan, an action plan was established between India and Japan. This provides for the movement of 50,000 Indian workers. To facilitate the movement of migrant workers. See, currently, there are 54,000 Indian workers in Japan. This is the current number. This is way below the actual potential. That's because Indian students, they don't prefer to study in Japan as much. Most Indian students until now have preferred United States, West European countries, Australia. This is where lakhs of Indian students go every year to study. They eventually join the workforce in those countries as well. But in Japan, right, Indian student population is very, very less. It's hardly 1,500 Indian students. It's minimal. So it is this anomaly which needs to be addressed. See, culturally, there is very poor understanding between the people on both sides. Indians don't understand much of Japanese culture. Yes, there are some linkages. There is a linguistic link, mainly from Tamil to Japanese language. There's a very close cultural link, again, dating back to Tamil empires, and as well as the contemporary times. For example, how Rajnikant is a rage in Japan, or how Japanese food is a rage in India. Many Japanese brands are big names in India, from Toshiba to Mitsubishi. But the thing is, the people to people cultural ties are very limited. Japanese still have a limited understanding of India's culture. Indians have a very poor understanding of Japanese culture. So promoting this, making each other understand each other's cultural nuances, getting rid of the stereotypes, promoting language education, like promoting Japanese in India, promoting Hindi and Indian languages in Japan. This would drive a change, a cultural change that could push more Indian students towards Japan. Today, there are hardly 1,500 students. Japan actually has 3.5 lakh foreign students, and out of them, just 1,500 are from India. So right now, the focus is to increase the entry of Indian students into Japan, and through the new agreement, 50,000 workers will be given opportunities to work in Japan. So this is in addition to the current 54,000 Indian workers who are already present and working in Japan. So if both the governments take the right steps, right initiatives, the people to people ties can also flourish, just like the private to private and government to government relationship. Now, coming to the prelim section, let's take a quick look at the small articles and end the session for today. On page 6, there is an editorial related to the Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar, the RVP, which is given out by the Ministry of Science and Technology. This is India's topmost awards given out to the leading scientists and researchers in the country. The Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar, it is divided today into 4 different categories. Just like in Padma Awards, you have Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan, Padma Shri, etc. In a similar manner, the RVP awards are also divided into different categories. We have the Vigyan Ratna, like Bharat Ratna, and the Vigyan Shri, like the Padma Shri, which is given to scientists for their lifelong contribution. Those who have made phenomenal contribution in different sectors of scientific research and development, they are awarded the Vigyan Ratna and Vigyan Shri. Then we have the Vigyan Yuva, named after Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar. The Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award, which is given out to young researchers, young scientists who are making groundbreaking research, or making big breakthroughs in scientific research. They are recognized. Their contribution is recognized through this award, the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award. Then there is a team award as well, which is given out. The Vigyan team, given out to a team of scientists, a team of researchers. So these are the 4 categories of awards under RVP. So just remember this fact for prelims. It's given out by the Ministry of Science and Technology. The editorial says that government interference should be minimal in choosing the awardees. The editorial says when it comes to choosing these awards for scientific contribution, the evaluation and decision should be made by scientific experts, not by bureaucrats and politicians. That's the argument the editorial is trying to make. Because see, in Padma Awards, you directly see a lot of political influence in deciding to whom the award goes to, right? So the editorial is hoping that this does not happen with regard to the Rashtriya Vigyan Puraskar. Because here, legitimate scientific contribution will have to be recognized. And that can be done only by peer researchers and scientists. So the editorial is urging the government to let scientists and experts to decide on who the awardee should be for genuine contribution to science, instead of the government and the bureaucracy and the politicians deciding it, which is likely to be driven by political influence. Next, on the supplement page, There's an image and an article that refers to the Hanley Dark Sky Reserve in Ladakh. So, what is the Hanley Dark Sky Reserve? This is India's first official dark sky reserve. Dark Sky Reserve is internationally recognized. It is recognized for mainly for observations in the field of astronomy, for making cosmological observations. So, areas with minimal to zero light pollution are designated as dark sky reserves under the international consortium which is there. They are given a rating, the Bortley rating, and the Hanley Dark Sky Reserve in India, which is the first dark sky reserve of our country, it has the best rating possible, the Bortley 1 rating, which means light pollution here in this part of Ladakh is minimal. Because when light pollution is high, it affects astronomical observations through telescopes, ground based equipment. So, this is where the Indian Astronomical Observatory is located. We also have the Mace Gamma Ray Telescope. These are some of the key astronomical observatories of India located in the Leh region of Ladakh. And the Hanley Dark Sky Reserve, it's one of the best sites for these observations, astronomical observations. The minimal light pollution here enables you to see the Milky Way with naked eye, not even with optical help, but just with naked eye you can see the Milky Way, and it is perfectly suited for making these large distance astronomical observations. So now the focus is on ensuring that light pollution is always tackled at this dark sky reserve. Further reduce any possibility of light pollution, promote tourism as well, because this could create opportunities for the local community. And the reason why this place in Ladakh was chosen is not just because of its remoteness and distance away from cities, but also because the high altitude, which means the air is very thin, which makes it perfect for astronomical observations. The air is not very dense. So ideal conditions exist here for astronomical observations, and that's where the first dark sky reserve of India had been set up. Next, the Sudan civil war is in news. Since the last couple of years, there is a civil war going on in the country of Sudan, which faces the Red Sea. So the conflict is primarily between the army, the armed forces of Sudan, versus a paramilitary group known as the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. It is alleged that RSF is supported by United Arab Emirates. Covertly, UAE is accused of arming and funding the RSF. So there is a power struggle, a conflict going on between these two armed factions in Sudan. So this article here, it gives an update on the conflict. The RSF, which has captured most of Western Sudan, especially the Darfur region, which is rich with resources, by the way. Darfur region is rich with oil, gold, etc. That explains UAE's possible involvement. So in the Darfur region, the El Fashar city has been entirely captured by RSF forces. The Sudanese armed forces have lost control. So that is the development here. So now Sudan is primarily divided between these fighting factions, with Eastern Sudan largely controlled by the army and the armed forces towards Khartoum, whereas the Darfur region largely controlled by the paramilitary RSF force. Next, on the same page, we have an article referring to a new deadly missile tested by Russia. Russia has tested a new intercontinental ballistic missile with cruise characteristics. See, usually cruise missiles, which fly very low, close to the surface of the ground, which fly at tremendous speed, they have a limited range. Whereas for long distance strikes, ballistic missiles are used, which use a parabolic path. They essentially exit the atmosphere, enter the space briefly, and make a re-entry, and they strike the target. Now, Russia has developed this unique missile, which merges the features of a classical ICBM with that of a cruise missile. This missile, which was tested, is known as the Burevestnik. So it's actually a nuclear-powered missile which can carry a nuclear warhead, a thermonuclear warhead. So it's equipped with a ramjet engine that makes use of radioactive process of propulsion. It actually has a exhaust which gives out radioactive material. So it's a nuclear-powered missile, a cruise missile flying very close to the surface of the ground, but it can fly at tremendous speeds and cover a distance of 14 to 15,000 kilometers. It can fly for minimum of 15 hours at a stretch. So essentially any part on the planet is possibly reachable by this missile. And this increases the tensions as far as the Ukraine conflict is concerned and the standoff between Russia and the West is concerned. So please make a note of this new age missile, a nuclear powered cruise missile, which travels a distance like an ICBM of 14, 15,000 kilometers. Coming to the last article, the Kurdish militant outfit, PKK, Kurdistan Workers' Party. The PKK is a Kurdish militant group which has been operating against Turkey or Turkey. See, the Kurds are an ethnic community found in this part of West Asia. They're found in Turkey. They're also found in parts of Iran, Iraq, and Syria. This is where you find the Kurd community. So they have a long-standing conflict with the government of Turkey. They want to liberate the Kurd areas and create a separate nation called Kurdistan. So the Kurdistan movement has been going on for many decades. So one of the major Kurdish militant outfit is the PKK, which was established in 1984 by Abdullah Öcalan. You can see him in the image here. He was the founder of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, which has been waging an insurgent war against Turkey to liberate the Kurdish areas from Turkey. So recently, this group has surrendered. A few months ago, you might remember we had discussed this development. The PKK has entered into a deal with Turkey. Abdullah Öcalan was arrested by Turkey many years ago. He has been in a Turkish jail. So Turkey has been able to pressurize him, and Abdullah Öcalan urged all the other PKK cadres to surrender and lay down the arms. So now PKK is in the process of disarming itself, disbanding itself. And they have announced that they are going to withdraw entirely from Turkey. Any PKK militants who are still operating in Turkey, they're going to withdraw. They're going to move out of the region. And in return, they expect Turkey to enable the political participation of the party. They want PKK to be recognized as a mainstream political organization in return. It's on this condition that Abdullah Öcalan had agreed to surrender. So PKK, which is now withdrawing from Turkey, has reminded Turkey of its commitments to recognize this outfit as a mainstream political organization, allow for PKK to represent the interests of the Kurd community. So this is another big development from West Asia. So on this note, I bring my detailed analysis to an end. I hope you have understood all the key topics. If you like the session, do press the like button, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That's it. Thanks for watching.